Australian teams searching for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 have stumbled upon an uncharted shipwreck in the Indian Ocean.
The museum's researchers studied the sonar data from these searches.
It was supposed to be impossible. A Boeing 777 vanishing without a trace. No distress call, no wreckage, just silence. But now, after 11 years of dead ends and denial, something just changed. Terrifying new sonar images have surfaced. A distress signal buried.
Images of the wreck will be further analyzed by marine archaeologists in hopes of identifying the ship.
A passenger who may not exist, and a cargo manifest that was never meant to be seen. What really happened to MH370? You're about to see why the mystery just got darker and more real than ever before. The disappearance that should have been impossible. For 11 years, people have tried to explain how a modern Boeing 777, one of the safest, most trackable aircraft on Earth, simply evaporated from the sky. And every time you think you've heard the full story, another detail hits you like a cold wave. Because the truth is this: the deeper you go into MH370, the stranger it gets. The night it vanished, MH370 lifted off into perfect conditions.
4-year search for the missing Malaysia Airlines flight uncovered some clues to a long-standing mystery.
No storms, no system alerts. The cockpit's final words were calm, routine, the kind of phrase a pilot says thousands of times. Then, suddenly, the aircraft's transponder went dark. 2 minutes later, it fell off civilian radar completely. And here's where history gets hacked. Military radar then picked up something no one expected.
The plane disappeared from Malaysian civilian radar. Reversed course back over peninsular Malaysia.
MH370 had made a sharp, deliberate turn west, crossing the Malay Peninsula like someone was steering with intent. How does a plane vanish from one radar system, only to appear on another going the wrong direction? Some experts believe a fire broke out, leaving the crew disoriented. But fires don't politely switch off transponders. Others suspect a catastrophic decompression knocked everyone out cold, leaving the plane to ghost fly for hours. But that still doesn't explain the purposeful turns. And then there's the most controversial idea of all, that someone in the cockpit intentionally redirected the plane. Was it the captain, the co-pilot, a hijacker, or something no one has identified yet? People forget one insane detail. MH370 kept flying for 6 more hours.
That it flew west and south and continued to fly for some 6.5 hours.
6 hours without a single radio call, while the plane quietly pinged satellites thousands of miles apart.
And we have breaking news right now. Malaysia Airlines confirms it has lost contact with a plane carrying 227 passengers.
The satellite handshakes show it flying steadily into the southern Indian Ocean, as if whoever was controlling it knew exactly how to avoid detection. And just when the world started thinking it had it all figured out, new evidence kept twisting the story. Debris washing up thousands of kilometers apart, ocean drift patterns that contradict each other, radar echoes that don't match official timelines. Even fishermen from the Maldives claimed they saw a low-flying jumbo jet roaring over their island that same morning. Were they wrong? Confused? Or did MH370 make a detour no one wants to consider? The cargo manifest. What was MH370 secretly carrying? There's one part of the MH370 mystery that rarely makes headlines. Not because it's unimportant, but because the deeper you dig, the more questions it raises.
Remind you of what we're finding out. The flight number is MH370.
It's the cargo manifest, a list that should be boring, routine, predictable. But in this case, it's anything but. Officially, MH370 was carrying 14 tons of cargo. Among the listed items were fruit, semiconductors, and something simply labeled as radio accessories and batteries. But when investigators followed up, some of the documentation was missing. Other details were redacted. The batteries in question turned out to be lithium-ion, the type known to overheat and catch fire under pressure. Could a battery fire have caused a cabin event so severe it incapacitated everyone on board? But that's only the start. According to a 2014 report by the Malaysian Transport Ministry, 2 tons of items on board were classified under a highly sensitive consignment and not inspected before departure. Why? Because the cargo was reportedly under special diplomatic clearance. Let that sink in. A sealed, government-approved shipment that was waved through without screening. To this day, authorities haven't publicly disclosed what it contained. And it gets stranger.
all working together to try to find clues. The area they're searching is far larger than the continental United States.
In the years since, multiple independent investigators, including aviation journalist Jeff Wise, have raised flags about the possible interception or hijacking of the plane because of this shipment. Some speculated the cargo could have included defense-related electronics, possibly being smuggled out of Malaysia or China, making the plane a target, not just a tragedy. Others went darker, wondering if the cargo had been deliberately mislabeled to hide something even more critical. There's no proof, but that's what makes this part so haunting. Because if it was just a technical malfunction, why redact a shipping label? Why approve a diplomatic bypass for a non-diplomatic commercial flight? Why leave the families and the world without a clear record of what was in that hold? And here's the twist. New sonar imagery shows unusually dense clusters of metal debris around the suspected impact zone. Pieces that don't match aircraft structure but may be containers. Could these fragments be tied to the mysterious cargo? Could they help explain what went so terribly wrong? The passenger nobody can explain. We've talked about the plane, the sonar images, the secret cargo, but there's something else, something that doesn't show up in ocean scans or satellite pings. It's about a name, a person on the flight manifest that some experts now believe shouldn't have been there at all. When the official MH370 passenger list was released, most names were quickly verified. Chinese tourists, Malaysian nationals, business travelers from Australia, France, and Iran. But investigators noticed something odd about Seat 2A, a business class seat that appeared empty. No family stepped forward. No one filed a missing person report. No ticketing data matched the manifest. The name assigned to it? Yufeng Zhang. And here's where it gets weird. That name, Yufeng Zhang, didn't appear in immigration exit logs. It wasn't in the airline's advance passenger information submitted to Beijing. And when foreign press tried to trace the identity, they hit a wall. No digital footprint, no passport data, no next of kin, nothing. At first, people thought it was just a clerical error. But then a former cybersecurity analyst, Charles Burrows, publicly claimed in a 2019 radio interview that his team flagged anomalous identity patterns in the flight manifest. Patterns consistent with intelligence agency tactics used to smuggle operatives or assets under false identities. According to Burrows, Yufeng Zhang was a cover name. For who? He wouldn't say. But he insisted it wasn't the only one on that flight. This theory set the internet on fire. Some claimed MH370 was carrying an intelligence operative fleeing with sensitive data. Others suggested the plane was deliberately diverted to intercept a person of interest, not for the cargo, but for who was sitting above it. And while that might sound far-fetched, here's the fact that keeps coming up. Neither Malaysian nor Chinese authorities ever addressed the missing passenger anomaly directly. They simply stopped talking about it. What if someone on board wasn't supposed to reach Beijing? What if MH370 was caught between agencies, secrets, and silence? It's easy to dismiss theories. But 11 years later, Yufeng Zhang remains one of the only names on that list that leads absolutely nowhere. And if new wreckage is confirmed and the bodies recovered, investigators may finally be forced to confront this uncomfortable truth. Was someone on board never meant to be found? The distress signal that shouldn't exist. It was the early hours of March 9th, 2014, just one day after MH370 vanished. Thousands of kilometers from the official search zone, a New Zealand satellite communications station quietly logged an anomaly, a faint, fragmented signal, barely detectable, lasting no more than a few seconds. It didn't come from a commercial airline frequency. It wasn't routed through standard air traffic channels. And yet the metadata attached to it triggered internal alerts. Why? Because the signal had one haunting signature. It originated from a frequency band used by emergency aircraft transponders, specifically the 406 MHz band, reserved for distress beacons. These are the same automated beacons triggered during crashes, designed to broadcast a plane's location via satellite. But MH370's beacon, it never activated. So what was this signal? The report, quietly passed to Malaysian authorities at the time, was never made public. But in 2023, a former contractor for the International Cospas-Sarsat satellite system, Leanna Wright, leaked internal documentation suggesting that a short, unexplained beacon ping had in fact been registered in the southern Indian Ocean, almost precisely near the Seahorse Zone, the same region where Ocean Infinity would later focus its scans. The timing of the ping? Just over 8 hours after MH370's last known handshake. The exact time frame when, if the aircraft had descended intact and slowly flooded, its emergency locator transmitter could have potentially triggered on water impact. but only if still connected to an electrical source. Some experts dismissed it as interference, a glitch, but others weren't so quick. ELTS are designed to survive crashes and pressure changes, and while one didn't activate automatically in this case, the signal captured resembled a manual override, the kind triggered by a surviving crew member, a chilling possibility. Could someone have tried to send a distress call after the crash? Here's what makes it worse. That same signal was never detected again. It flared, then vanished. But it left just enough data to triangulate a possible location, within 30 nautical miles of where new sonar images now show debris. The captain's home simulator and the route no one wants to talk about. Months after MH370 disappeared, investigators entered the suburban home of Captain Zaharieh Ahmad Shah, the man in command of the flight. Nothing seemed unusual. A tidy living room, framed photos, a love for aviation that lined every wall. But upstairs, in a private room behind a closed door, they found something that would spark controversy for the next decade. A custom-built home flight simulator. Pilots often train at home. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was what they found on the hard drive. Buried inside deleted files, recovered using forensic tools, were fragments of simulated flight routes. At first, they looked normal. Standard paths, likely for practice or testing. But one of them wasn't. It was chillingly specific, a simulated flight out of Kuala Lumpur, turning west off course, and ending deep in the southern Indian Ocean. In other words, a practice run that looked shockingly similar to MH370's real final path. Malaysian officials tried to downplay it. They said the simulator files didn't prove intent. They argued the southern Indian Ocean route could be coincidence, but aviation experts around the world didn't buy it. Blaine Gibson, a wreckage hunter who later found pieces of the plane in Madagascar, called it one of the most disturbing clues in the entire investigation. Others went further, questioning if Zaharieh had used the simulator to model the perfect route for a ghost flight, one that would avoid radar, never be intercepted, and leave the fewest digital traces behind. But here's the twist. That specific flight simulation wasn't complete. It didn't land, it simply ended, just like MH370 did. Some investigators believe it was part of a benign test scenario. Others, including former Australian Transport Safety Bureau officials, admitted on record that it raised red flags. Not proof, but signs. Signs that someone had possibly rehearsed the world's greatest aviation disappearance. Even creepier? The route simulated on Zaharieh's machine ends within 200 nautical miles of the new debris field discovered by Ocean Infinity in 2025. That fact has only recently come to light, as AI-assisted modeling cross-referenced the simulator coordinates with sonar scan zones. The seafloor impact signal scientists found, and then quietly shelved. Just when experts thought the night of March 8, 2014 couldn't get any stranger, another group of scientists stepped forward. Not aviation experts, but seismologists. The kind of people who monitor earthquakes, volcanic activity, and ocean tremors. And they noticed something chilling. At 1:15 a.m. UTC, roughly within the time frame MH370 would have exhausted its fuel and descended, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization seismic station in Diego Garcia, yes, the same region home to a classified United States military facility, recorded a faint but unusual vibration deep beneath the Indian Ocean. Not an earthquake, not tectonic movement. A short, sharp, localized acoustic burst. The exact kind produced when a large object hits the ocean's surface at high speed. The signal lasted less than 3 seconds, and its waveform was unlike typical natural events. It was too small for a submarine explosion, too sharp for geological activity, and too isolated to be background noise. The amplitude matched something weighing over 200 tons striking water. Sound familiar? When an investigator from the University of Western Australia, Dr. Alec Duncan, analyzed similar signals, he publicly admitted that the frequency range could be consistent with a large metallic impact, the signature of a commercial airliner breaking apart upon hitting water. But here's where the plot twists. The CTBTO never released the Diego Garcia anomaly as part of any official MH370 report. It was mentioned only in a technical appendix and then forgotten. Why? The coordinates derived from the signal pointed to a region southwest of the key search area, an area that was never fully scanned in any government-led search mission. But guess what lies just beyond that location? The Seahorse Zone, the very region where Ocean Infinity's 2025 sonar sweep just detected long, flat metallic structures that match a Boeing 777 wing. Did the seafloor literally feel MH370 crash that night? Some experts argue the signal was too weak to be definitive. Others whisper that if the signal truly represented an impact, it would place the crash site dangerously close to restricted waters, explaining why certain agencies might prefer silence. And then there's the most disturbing question of all. If the ocean itself registered the final moment of MH370, why did no one follow the signal? The phone calls that rang after the plane was gone. Hours after MH370 was officially declared missing, multiple relatives reported that their loved ones' phones were still active, still connected to networks, and in several cases, still ringing instead of going straight to voicemail. One Chinese relative, desperately calling her brother, heard his phone ring 4 times before it cut. Another family member in India said his missing wife's phone rang for nearly 20 seconds before disconnecting. Malaysia Airlines even admitted that when they tried calling some of the crew's phones, they connected, implying the devices were still powered and still communicating with cell towers. How is that possible? Phones don't ring underwater. They don't ring when destroyed. They don't ring when batteries are gone. And they definitely don't stay connected if the plane had already crashed. Telecom experts scrambled for explanations. They claimed it could be a phantom ring, a system glitch, a delayed network echo. But here's the problem. Some of those calls generated location pings. Extremely rough, incomplete ones, yes, but pings nonetheless, suggesting the phones were still somewhere between Malaysia and the Malacca Strait, long after the plane supposedly headed for the southern Indian Ocean. Even stranger, a Chinese telecom report quietly noted that one passenger's phone connected to a cell-based station near the coastal city of Kota Baru at 2:43 a.m., more than 1 hour after the transponder shut off, meaning, at least on paper, one device from MH370 was still above ground, powered, and within range. Some investigators brushed it off as coincidence. Others claimed someone might have removed the SIM card and placed it in a different device entirely. But the families? They knew those rings. They heard them. And nothing about them felt accidental. What if the plane didn't immediately crash? What if parts of the cabin stayed intact longer than anyone thought? Or, the question no one wants to ask, what if the plane wasn't where the world assumed it was during that silent hour? Because if multiple passenger phones were truly active after the disappearance, then the timeline is wrong, the path is wrong, and the theories we've spent a decade debating might be built on the wrong hour entirely. Click the card on your screen for the next mystery, and don't forget to subscribe.